hear this, and then it opens up, and then we're official.
And explain it to the universe.
Right.
Don't surprise them.
Right. And the thing is the universe likes the off shit. Like if there's a knock at the door and the podcast gets interrupted and they have to get up, the universe doesn't want that edited out. That's the shit they like to see. It's weird. All right. We ready?
We're ready.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, universe. We are killing it. New Year's Eve 17?
Yeah.
All right. Tonight I got a very special guest, Mr. Chris Dunham.
Hey, everybody.
Comedian. Visit. This is what I love about, I always talk about where I'm at. We're located out of Central Florida in the Villages, Florida, which is a retirement community, and it is one of the greatest things for a promoter and somebody who's wanting to do comedy, because I get tremendous talent that comes visits their parents or their nanny or their pappy. So who are you visiting?
My mom.
Your mom? And she moved to the Villages or some?
Yeah, she moved to the Villages probably about, I'm guessing, 9 years ago.
Nice.
Something
Okay.
like that.
All right. Now, Chris Dunham I get a phone, or he reached out to me on social media. He tells me, hey, I'm a comedian from LA and I want to come to your room. And I was like, hells to the yeah. So the week he came in, amazing comedian, and I wouldn't have you up here if he weren't funny. So we're not even gonna, they'll catch your personality. But in conversation with you, you told us so much interesting stuff. I said, man, I'd love to have you on the podcast, because for those of us who are in the Southeast United States, to us listening to, we watch all of our gurus and we hear about the Laugh Factory, the Comedy Store. We hear about all these the Ice House in Sacramento. So all I hear about is these, So then I have a guy who told me the story about him going to LA. And I said, damn, this is such a great story. And it has one of those, what I call a Fight Club twist to it. One of those weird ironies in the middle of the story, to me anyways. So, all right. What are we at here? We're Chris Dunham, LA comic. Tell us about you, who you are, where you're at, how long you've been there, and also what you do as well as being a comic.
Well, I grew up for the most part in the Bay Area. Lived there until I was 16, and then moved to Pennsylvania for my last.
Again, Bay Area, what does that mean exactly?
The Bay is...
I hear about it like on the music, they go Bay Area! Yeah. And I was like, cool, but I don't know.
Most people would say, some people, I guess, you would just think of the greater San Francisco area, right?
San Francisco area.
You got San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, Fremont for myself.
Was that, were you repping just now?
I'm right there. But Fremont, all of the... Because if you look at the Bay actually comes in, right? So everything that kind of touches it. Like when I was a kid, I used to be able to actually ride my bike and go to the Bay and just watch. And so I lived there. Then I lived in what was called the East Bay. And then there's also another area called the East Bay. But that's the real East Bay.
See, that's that weird Yankee West Coast shit. I don't know nothing about that. East Bay, got it.
So anyway,
the real East Bay and the not real East Bay.
Got into junior year of high school, moved to Erie, Pennsylvania. And
that's different.
Very different. It went, because most people have that story of going from a small town to a big town. Mine was in the opposite.
Right. Did work have your family move there, or?
My mom.
Yeah.
My mom, my brother, and myself. And that was the first time that I'd ever seen people kind of start segregating themselves by race or asking about race, or race was a little bit more of an important or pronounced thing.
It's definitely more prevalent on the East Coast than the West Coast.
Yeah, that was the first time I realized that, there's a good example is when I think it was one of my first days, a kid came up and said, "What are you?" And I said, "I'm white." And he goes, "What kind?" I had no idea.
That sounds like something you'd hear around here.
Yeah, I had no idea.
It's usually the opposite around here. Not that it necessarily come from me, but we saw racism. They were like, "What kind of you boy?"
So I had to go home and ask my mom, and then I found out that it was English and Irish.
Okay.
But then that's when I had never heard of, then that's when I met kids that were actually Polish. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Then you had Italian, you did have Irish. And so that was very different for me. It was just basically, instead of being around a bunch of different races, I was now just around a bunch of different white people.
Right.
But overall, though, that it was one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Sure.
Because played on a great basketball team. The education that I got, because I went to an all-boys Catholic prep school. It set me up in a lot of ways for the rest of my life. So in that way, I feel blessed.
So what happened from Erie, Pennsylvania, then what?
Went to Duquesne University in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, okay.
Yeah, and English Lit major, graduated, not knowing what I wanted to do with my life. And I knew it was either going to be, I kind of knew that I wanted to do something creative. But I liked acting while I was in college. It was the first time I had done something kind of performance arts creative. But I didn't know if I really wanted to pursue that. But I knew that I would find my answer in either New York or Los Angeles.
Wow.
And
how old were you when you made this decision to find your answer?
It was actually in the summer of, after I graduated from college. I was sitting there.
So you were like 19, 18?
No, I was 22.
Oh, you graduated from college, forgive me.
Yeah, so I graduated from college.
Okay, 22.
And I was reading the book.
And you're in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And I was reading the book, The Lives of John Lennon. And there was this part in it about, they call it the Lost Weekend, but it was when he and Yoko broken up and he moved to Los Angeles. And for some reason, I just said, I'm going to move to Los Angeles. Because John had moved to Los Angeles.
Yeah, John Lennon, right.
I was like, yeah, if it's good enough for him.
Right.
And that, plus I was tired of the snow.
Okay, well, that right there, I could totally relate to that. Because I find it interesting that, okay, not knowing anything, but it seems to me New York would have been closer.
Oh, God.
Right. So, like, did you even check it out before you left? Or you just,
Because I think also partially it was due to the fact that I was a California boy.
Right.
So I think there was that element of also already feeling comfortable. Meanwhile, though, Los Angeles in the Bay Area in Northern California you might as well just cut the state in half.
Right.
It's so vastly different. But yeah, that's how I decided. And then moved.
So you went to and what is your vocation? I know what it is, but so for the world to know,
I'm a teacher now.
You're a school teacher.
Yeah.
Public school.
Yep. LAUSD.
Okay, and that's the second half of the interview. We'll get into that, but so you go to. When did you go into LA, and did you become a teacher after? Like that's when you started.
I moved to LA. Like I said, not knowing what I wanted to do, but I wanted something that didn't feel like a real job. So
I can totally relate.
Yeah. Right. So I ended up working at restaurants and stuff, and then one of my friends said while we were one night hanging out, he's like, what do you do? And at that point I didn't know what I was doing, but I was sitting and I would write out how I felt about a subject.
Right.
And that was kind of like my journal. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up sharing that with him, and he goes, that's funny, you should try stand-up. And at that point I took my writing seriously, and I was like, this isn't funny, this is my life.
Look, peasant.
Yeah. And then he goes, that's what I'm talking about. I'm like, okay. And so I got on stage a few times within 4 years, but there was nothing. Like I would get on stage once and then not get on stage for 6 more months. You know.
And this was when?
Between the ages of 23 and 27. But so I don't really consider that time of doing stand-up. And then once a month before, roughly about a month before my 27th birthday, I finally got on stage, and I wouldn't say I got laughs. I remember most people, it was an open mic, no one knew who I was. Mm. So people kind of just, they just kind of walked out. There were like 3 people that were watching me. I don't even remember if I did that well, but it just felt like home.
Right.
And then, you just learn from there.
Sure. So how long have you been doing stand-up now?
12 years.
12 years.
Yeah.
Are we ready for the ironic twist yet, or are we going to keep talking about the dream of getting to LA and welcome to the jungle? I mean, are we going to... So
you want to wait with that?
Yeah, we can back up with that. We still got time.
Okay.
All right. So you're a school teacher. You're in LA. You're living now. How long have you been in LA itself now?
Since I was 23, so 16 years.
Okay, so 16 years. Did you did you see the big change? Like, all I hear about, just like there is here, we were talking about gentrification and stuff. Did you see the change? Because I heard, like, through listening to some of my gurus, like Bert Kreischer talks about how when they were cleaning up LA, the bums were being pushed into his neighborhood because I guess they were pushing them out of the city and they were just trickling. So he talks about how they were building a pool in the back of his house, and the homeless people were using his porta potties. And so it's just conversation I listen to, and all I do is hear it, and then it's like, and I hear you guys are on fire too. So it's like, I
didn't live in that part of LA.
So
it's so weird.
Right. Well, again, based on where we are here, it sounds like, like we all think even the big cities, like, you could cross it in 45 minutes to an hour, and the biggest city like LA is like gigantic, right?
Yeah, it's huge. And on top of that, because of the fact that it takes so long due to traffic to get places, you don't see as much of LA as you think that you would.
Right.
And so if it wasn't for stand-up, which has taken me literally everywhere around Los Angeles, there's certain parts of LA I never would have seen.
Right.
And the first place I moved to, I remember I read a book about moving to LA, and they said a good place to live as far as location, where the rents are cheaper, would be in the San Fernando Valley. Or as most people, we call it the Valley. So I moved to North Hollywood. I thought North Hollywood meant like it was directly above Hollywood.
Right.
That's not the case at all.
No.
It's there's a freeway between the two places, and there's Studio City and Universal City Walk, all these other things, and mountains between North Hollywood and Hollywood.
Right.
And Hollywood, when I first moved there, was such a dump that I just went, and it took so long to get there that I went, I'm just not coming back here.
Right.
And so I didn't really see what we were talking about, like the gentrification, and I see it now that I live on the opposite. I live in the Valley. Because the Valley's always been kind of this, I mean, you can get even more suburbs, but it's the closest thing to the suburbs.
Right.
In Los Angeles, that's still close to everything.
Right.
That's where you see the homes that are that'll have a little bit of a backyard, and you can actually park on a street, and it'll still be, a fixer-upper that's 1.2 million. And
yeah, you were talking about that, and so we often, I jokingly say that Florida is the ignorant cousin of LA, like of California. So like Florida is the podunky. We got coast, we got badass beaches, we know how to party. We actually, in my opinion, I believe our organic, by just the organicness of it, we are world famous for having fun, Florida.
Yeah.
And then we have, because I'm half Cuban, we have our Hispanic culture down in the South, and I know that there's big Mexican culture and a bunch of different cultures, obviously, in LA. But but
it is kind of funny that you think about, like, in LA they talk about the immigrant population, right? And your immigrant population is old people. It just keep coming, dude. You guys.
Thank God for them. Listen, when I was a young man, you had to drive 30 minutes to go to work. Now that doesn't sound like shit, but it's 30 miles, okay? I mean, we had to drive to the next city because there was nothing here but gas stations and stuff. The villages came and everything came with it. So now people from all over Florida will drive every day an hour and a half to come work in the villages because they want to, whether it's the resorts, the golf, whatever, the hospitality industry or whatever. So now, but the idea, because I have an aunt, my great aunt, who lives here in the villages. She had one of those houses, those military houses. Her husband was in the military back in the day. I mean, way back in the day. So now, her house is the neighborhoods that all of these big high-ups in the military want those houses. So she's explaining, like, and I mean, I'm not putting y'all don't know my aunt, so I'm not putting her business out like that. I'm not gonna name her name. But like, she sold her house, which is like smaller than this house, for like almost $1 million. but she bought it for like, 10 grand back in the 30s or whatever, 40s, because that's, she's old as dirt. No offense, auntie. But the point is, like, that's one thing that is unfathomable to this country boy's mind, is the price, like what you were saying, and like, I'm so backwater country and I'm proud to be that. Like, I'm driving this little city up the street in Orlando for my Uber, and it trips me out to see a family sitting at the bus stop, like nothing wrong with it, but it's just a family, mom, dad, and a couple little kids, little kid, and then right next to him is like a homeless dude. And it's just weird to me because I'm not familiar with that in this area. Like to be that comfortable sitting next to somebody that's so off the bat, like you don't know what could happen. You know what I mean?
It's so weird that you say that because, some of the teachers and I have talked about what it must be like for any of these kids to grow up in Hollywood. It's because as soon as you walk out of your house, it's insanity.
I can imagine.
I mean, like, and you say I've just seen things that I go, if I had a child, I would hightail it.
Right.
I don't care what I'd have to do. Just to protect them, their eyes from having to see these things at too young of an age, because then that becomes normal.
Right. That's
not normal.
Right.
Like, we're, as human beings, you shouldn't see the things that you see.
No doubt.
And it's crazy. And the kids, the things that these kids get into, by the time they're probably 12 or 13, would just blow. I don't even want to know.
No doubt.
And you hear the stories. Oh, by the way, if anyone is curious about this, every time you have a kid that has, and I'm going to sound very politically correct on this, behavioral issues, right? It's always due to a problem that is outside of the school. That every kid, unless they have some kind of learning disability, you know what I mean, or certain things that they need, that extra help for.
Right.
It's made me realize, man, so many times that you come across people, so many of us are just products of our environment.
No doubt.
Anyway, I'm getting on a tangent.
Well, that'll be for the second half. I was just gonna start putting up the warning because I have so much that I want to bust.
Comedy.
I want the unit. Well, yeah, we're gonna discuss that. Then we're gonna have some fun. But
okay.
I always love it because what I want my universe to wait for is the and they know what I'm talking about by this point in the episodes. Is the second half of the story. I have a guy. He runs the Ocala Breeder Sales, his name, shout out Howard. He runs he's in charge of Bonkers for Ocala, the comedy circuit. So that's how I met him, by going to support some of my friends, because I haven't performed at Bonkers. And I'm like talking to him, and I go, he's an older gentleman, and I'm like, so how long you been in the business? In casino businesses and stuff. And he's like, I've been in the casino business for 50 years. Wow. And I'm like, man, I bet you have some great stories. And he smiled. So then he goes, oh, and by the way, I'm top 3 world-renowned experts of Sherlock Holmes. I've written 8 books, 4 of them in Russian, and I have a
fan fiction.
Sherlock Holmes. He's some sort of an expert. He's going to be coming on the show soon. And yeah, my partners are going nuts because I guess my other partner is a Sherlock Holmes fan. Who the fuck is Sherlock? I mean, I get it, but why is it like he's like, I didn't realize he was so popular. So now the guy, and he goes like, oh, and I have a 28-year-old wife in Russia. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to have this interview. You know what I'm saying? And the agenda too is with the power of the podcast, my plan is to get in his head and heart, get him as a barbarian, and then go and start getting paid to go on Bonkers without the
weight line,
the politics.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to turn the sound down a little bit. Push that damn mic back in the bushes.
Better?
Yeah, you were hitting it with your arm.
My bad. Universe, say hello to Bricks and Mortar. Bricks and Mortar, say hi back.
Hello.
Say happy, whatever the fuck, Happy New Year's.
Oh yeah, it is. Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year's Eve. And you know, like I always talk about, we're doing interviews the night before Thanksgiving. We got fucking people in here every major holiday grinding. That's what I try to tell. It's like I'm trying to invoke some classic things into the universe. Maybe the young fans, work ethic.
You found me at a very vulnerable time.
Oh,
because I mean that as in I had absolutely nothing going on, and it was you're saving me from sitting at home.
Well, in my defense, I've been trying to get you out for a minute. You want to come out tonight?
No.
See, you're such a big... Another thing that's kind of funny about my man here, let's get into some of this fucking jokey joke shit. First day I meet him, he comes from California. Again, just like you said, in my mind, North Hollywood's right above Hollywood. In my mind, everyone from California smokes pot.
Everyone.
Because it's now it's recreation. It's wide open. So then I come and I'm like, yo, what's up, man? I got my medical marijuana card. You want some Turkish blend? He's like, nah, I don't smoke weed. I do yoga. I'm like, oh, shit, you definitely are catering to another stereotype. California, bunch of vegan hippie tree huggers.
It's weird. I've actually been a vegetarian now.
Oh my gosh.
Let's see, 13 or 14 years, and yeah, do yoga, meditate, do all that stuff, man.
So, I wanna hear about your Doug Stanhope. We have plenty of time. I want to hear about your Doug Stanhope story.
Okay.
Before you said before, big ups to my man. He's a man of honor. He's like, I'm not here to shit on anybody. So I don't have that in me anyways. I'm the guy, like, occasionally I'll get called and asked if I'd like to be in a roast battle, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't, because I don't know how to roast him. I'll be like, look at how good looking he is. I'm like, I don't know how to make somebody feel bad about themselves.
I like that.
I have this thing where it's like, you know, all these, you good looking guy, yeah, okay, go to the back. You're bringing my value down. Like, and that's my way of picking on people. Like, there was a guy at my work, tall, good-looking kid, blonde hair, blue-eyed, and he would come around, and I go, what did I tell you about coming around here? You make me look bad. I said, I can feel your Nordic genes from here. You need to get on with your bad self. Everybody would laugh. He'd get all red cheek and run off. You're a cute young guy. Big, tall, chalk. But the point is that's my way of beating up on people. So I don't beat up. I don't shit on nobody. And I hear it all the time. God damn it. Comics, stop fucking browbeating each other. Man, I hear it all the time.
I think you do need a release. So, but the problem is, and I see it whether it's on Facebook and social media has brought it to another level.
Right. Trolls.
But you need whenever you're frustrated, you need to have, I say you need this. You need, just like in real life, you need a couple good friends. You need a couple good friends in comedy that will understand your frustration when you're talking about stuff.
True.
Without understanding that because there's a very big difference, and this is something that's being lost in the world, between constructive criticism and being a hater. Mm-hmm. You know, and I try to impress that upon the students as well. You can have an opinion, but a constructive criticism, if you want to be a hater, that means you don't back up your claim.
So I guess I mean haters. Stop hating on each other.
Yeah.
Especially in a group of people.
But if you have constructive criticism,
true,
that's good. But once again, it's a workspace, mm-hmm. right? So, and you never know how the other, unless someone's a good friend of yours, you never know how the other person might take it. To me, I understand when someone's getting their frustration out, and so I never take it as, oh, that person must hate blah 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 or whatever. And a lot of it, dude, is just because someone is getting something that someone wishes that they had.
Right, jealousy.
Whether it's laughs, it's laughs. If it's money, if it's whatever. Mm-hmm. And so you're trying to find a way to bring somebody down, you know?
So with that being said, we're not going to hate on anybody. Tell me who you're, like, right now, what comics are you fucking with? Like I get on these tangents. So like I look at everything from a business perspective. It's God's honest truth. I'm the Damon Dash of comedy. I have no idea
who that is.
Jay-Z, Rockefeller Records, there was two of them. Jay-Z and Damon Dash. Damon Dash never spit one lyric, but he was the half of the power because he was the guy who did all the business behind the scenes. So he was always the businessman and Jay-Z was the talent. So I've always been the businessman. The fact that I'll tell people jokingly when I do a showcase or whatever, or if I get up there and I'm 5 comics deep and out of the 5 comics I felt like maybe I got the best response from the audience, I tell the guy, I'm comfortable being the worst best comedian in the lineup. If I'm the best comedian in the lineup, you did a bad job promoting this and you need to get better comics. I have no problems. But I don't really consider myself this great, brilliant, murdering mind of comedy. I just tell funny shit that happens to me and it gets over. But I'm also more interested in developing talent. I really love seeing, to me, I look at it as art. When I see different comedians come in, I have a guy, shout out Jason Henson. He's a dark motherfucker. I tell him all the time, I'm like, dude, I can't even hang out with you for more than 2-3 days at a time. You start bringing me down. But his comedy is so sharp and it's dark. Like, I can't do dark comedy. He kills it. So tell me who your favorite comics are. Who are you fucking with on like what you're listening to, or?
This is gonna sound really weird. I don't really watch much comedy anymore.
I get that a lot. I get that a lot from comedians.
No. I used to.
So
when I first started, I would say my first 7 to 8 years. Oh my God, dude! But comedy was also, for that first 7 to 8 years, pretty much the only thing that I really wanted to talk or even think about. But I can definitely name some of my favorite comics of all time. I'd probably have to say that a guy with the ability to watch him over and over again, the same special, that gets me is Patrice O'Neal.
Patrice is a monster. He's a hard pill to swallow. He's got some shit, man, but I dig it. I love the sharpness of his mind, too.
What I loved about it was almost as if he was telling you something and he knew up front that you weren't going to dig what he said.
Oh, no doubt.
So his style was like, all right, let me take the time to explain this to you. Mm-hmm. And then he would take the time, and then there's all these jokes embedded within it, and by the end you're like, God, man, this guy is so right.
Oh yeah.
I can see his point of view, and on it. And I don't think that the way he talked, he was so on point when it came to women. And I also liked his take on race, mm-hmm. because his race stuff wasn't like, all white people suck, right? Who's with me? Right. It was like the way he talked about it. It was just, I'd never seen someone do it like that. I remember there was one bit. It was one of the first ones that I ever saw. Was how he's scared of how he never litters, and that's all I'm gonna say. Just YouTube. Patrice O'Neal litter, or race and litter, and he's got this bit about why he doesn't litter, and it's so funny because he's basically able to encompass how the perception of a black man,
right,
or whoever, in our society.
Right.
So I think he was great. Burr, Stanhope.
Burr's great. Stanhope, great.
Dude,
Stanhope, if it wasn't for the way Stanhope delivers his comedy, I wouldn't fuck with him. Because I don't understand mental illness. I don't, it's not stuff that I really, but when he does it, like the last special he did on CISO, when he talked about the difference between mental disorder and mental illness, whatever, he had this thing where one is the one that you raise money for and you take care of and you coddle because they're sweet, then the other one's like, and it's like you want to put them on an island and blow the island up, and then the one, like, in his, and I'm butchering the joke, but in his state they were like second from the bottom of most interested in contributing to mental illness to help as a cause, and then one person who was mental ill, I guess, shot the woman who signed that into order.
Oh, wow.
And he shot her into mental illness. And it's whoa, but damn if it isn't poignant. You know what I'm saying?
My two favorite specials of his, the one in New York where he's wearing the Libertarian t-shirt, mm-hmm. I think that's probably his. To me, nothing has ever come close to that. But I feel like the one that captures him in a normal club setting, I think, was his special right before that. It was shot in black and white.
Yep.
It was in, I think, Seattle. And that is one of the most beautifully shot and the what is it with sound? The audio on it, you can literally hear distinct laughs.
Right.
You feel. I've never watched a special and felt like I was more in the room. Like these comics that shoot in like this huge theater.
Right.
And then the audience is poorly mic'd. Dude, how am I watching?
Have you seen Jamie Foxx?
No.
I Might Need Security?
No.
That's exactly what it sounds like. It sounds like he's alone in an empty room.
Yes.
The audio's just a hair off, and it you can hear it. I mean, you can hear it. It's huge.
Yeah, and I don't know. I like the smaller setting.
Me too, absolutely.
You know, it's even Brian Regan. One of his best shot specials was at an improv. I think that was the I Walked on the Moon. But you still felt like you were at the improv.
Right.
And to me, that's the best, because when I'm watching comedy, especially as a comic, it's very easy because it's a screen to divorce yourself from being in the moment with that.
Right.
And so when you have Stanhope's special, I can't disengage from it. That black and white one. Even the Libertarian one, the New York, was shot pretty well. The editing in a couple places was kind of weird, but.
Are you a fan of editing?
I you know what?
Do you have an ear for it?
I wasn't until I saw bad editing and or bad, camera work or the mic, the audio.
Right.
I didn't know that I cared about that stuff.
Right.
Now I see it because you want to give the best product,
Sure.
what I mean, to whoever's going to watch it, and. But then there's other people. Okay, other comics. Probably the comic that has the biggest influence on me. One of the biggest influences would probably be Brian Regan. And the reason why with him is I love how everything that he does is so grounded in reality, and everything is simple. It's simple to understand.
Yeah, I'm thinking of that one where he was riding by the horse trailer. Like there was on the highway, and he's like, "I'm a horse in a trailer." It's just Brian Regan's a murderer. He's a murderer. I know exactly what you're talking about.
One of my favorite bits, and I've probably seen it. I probably watched it on YouTube. If I had to guess, 150 times, is his buying a refrigerator.
Yeah.
That thing.
Oh, yeah.
There's certain jokes that comics have done where I've actually wanted to do a series, but they wouldn't sell because you have to be a real comic nerd to enjoy this. Is I want to take what they said verbatim and have a nice, not a picture, but a drawing in the back, and have it printed out almost like a movie poster.
Right.
That Patton Oswalt's bit, it's the most well-worded, just beautifully crafted thing I've ever seen. It's the dirtiest, cleanest joke ever, is him talking about a 65-year-old woman giving birth. He did that on national TV, and that is the dirtiest joke, one of the dirtiest jokes that I've ever heard. Because if he used the language that he should be using, as a more amateur, non-professional comic, how about this? Anyone except Patton Oswalt would have made that very dirty.
Right. Oh, he's brilliant.
Yeah.
He's a surgeon. I'm not a huge Patton Oswalt fan. No offense, Patton Oswalt, but his last one that he just did on Netflix. Like a scalpel, just artistic. He does a lot of Trump jokes, and I'm about fucking fed up with Trump jokes. Not that I don't think there's plenty of material being written, but Jesus Christ, let's aim for a bigger target. But the way he did it was artistic and eloquent. My favorite, what you were just saying there, what reminded me was when the Bill Burr, the black and white, where he talked about how he got out of religion, how he just left religion, and he said it was like that awkward moment in Curly, Joe Rogan and his, shout out Joe Rogan, my bromance, my guru, in his podcast, he talks about when you have them, where it's almost like you can hypnotize the audience. And Bill Burr, especially the black and white one, was like when he was talking about the burglar coming in with the sickle and the dog, and he's sleeping.
You want to hear my two favorite Bill Burr stories?
Tell me, please.
Me? Okay.
Oh, you know Bill? I'm like, you brushed into him?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, see, this is what I love. Now let's talk about you meeting famous people by accident. Go ahead.
Okay, so the first one was I was standing in there's a comic named Sam Tripoli.
I love Sam Tripoli.
Oh, you know Sam?
He's a beast.
Dude, I've literally known Sam almost since I started doing stand-up.
He's performing tonight here in Tampa.
Yeah, because him and I were standing in the same line, and I turned and I was like, "Are you Sam Tripoli?" And then we started chatting. We've been friends since. So I'm standing in the hallway at the Hollywood Improv, right? Joe Rogan is actually on stage. It was Ari Shaffir's storytelling show,
right,
which is by far one of the best shows. Just heavy hitters talk real stories. So Rogan is murdering. I mean, it's just destruction on there, right? Now, but I'm in the hallway, and I'm talking to Tripoli. Burr is pacing back and forth, kind of like freaking out. And I had never met Bill or anything like that. And Sam actually turns to him, grabs him with two hands, and he goes, "Hey, you're gonna do all right. They're gonna love you." And I went, "Oh my God.
Isn't that something?
It never ends.
Isn't that something?
It never ends. Like that fear, I mean, Bill Burr is a step away from like God status in like there's only
I think Kevin Hart's probably the only more successful comic than him right now.
Yeah, and so to have that a guy who was probably a 25-year vet at that time, going boom, 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 boom. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? It made me. It was one of those moments of like, oh, good. And then that's when I realized too, when that moment goes away, when you stop feeling that, quit because you don't care anymore.
So check this out. There is this moment. It's on a documentary, and we'll get right back to it. There's a documentary with Everyone Hates Raymond. What's his name? The main guy.
Ray Romano.
Say it.
Ray Romano.
Ray Romano just got done with a show. It's some kind of a documentary about stand-up, and he's in it. And it's just like a thing where he's in the backseat of the limo, and he's like, "Do you think they liked it? Like, I mean, do you think?" And I'm like, "Holy shit, dude! This is Ray Romano." And he's like, "I don't know if they liked it." And they're like, "Ray, you know," and it's just that weird thing where it's again the same thing. That's like you could YouTube that Ray Romano freaking out in a limo, and I'm sure that's probably the thing that'll pop up. But again, and again, we'll get right back to it. But Steve Martin, they said that he stopped doing stand-up because he couldn't tell anymore. He says, "I could get on the stage and kick my leg out and they would all die. I would murder by kicking my leg. I couldn't tell if my material was really funny anymore." Because he was so famous at that point. And you see the Damon Dash in me was like, "Fuck it, bro, ride that shit out." But that's it, But the thing about it is, it's like, it's amazing how that emptiness doesn't seem to be filled with doing your craft
or just wanting to do your absolute best.
No doubt.
It's and because that is so important. At the same time, you need, I think, as a comic, you need to analyze, learn something from it, and then you have to wipe it clean. Because if you hold on it and you take it home, you're gonna it'll eat you alive. Eat you alive. It's and then it's gonna make, if you have to go to work or whatever, just let it all go.
Right.
Whether I let my good sets, those are the ones I let go first.
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
Because there's no need to walk around with an ego.
Right. No doubt.
Here's my second
Bill Burr story. Come on.
So,
God, I love Bill Burr too.
Do you remember the movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High? There was the kind of Italian guy that was really cool. I think Bob Robert something. Anyway, he opened up a coffee shop in North Hollywood, and it had for a while the best open mic in North Hollywood. And so there was this moment of like, I get done and I'm starting to walk out and I'm noticing all these people are just milling about. I'm like, what's going on? And since you know comedy so well,
right.
Dean Del Rey.
Shut ya.
Okay, so Dean, I'm walking out, and Dean's walking, and he's like, "Hey, Chris," and I was like, "What's up, man?" And he goes, "Dude, stick around." And he goes, "Burr's coming." I'm like, "Burr's coming?" He goes, "Yeah." Dude, Bill Burr. This is another thing that's awesome. A comedy god. he still will show up at open mics.
No doubt, no
and
doubt.
Open mics. And what he did is he tweeted, "Hey, I'm going to be working on a 25-minute set or something like that at Bob's Espressos in North Hollywood at this time." So I book it back into the in there, and I sat and I stood literally maybe 7 feet, 8 feet away from Burr, and I got to watch him bring absolute thunder.
Mayhem.
It was great. And then my buddy, this is the last thing I'll say about Burr, is my buddy Jackson featured for him at Flappers in Burbank, or was on the show, or whatever it was. And I was in the side room, and I didn't know Burr was there. And Jackson walks out, and Jackson had these eyes that'll just like this, and he stares at the ground
While he performed?
after he was done with the set, and Burr's on stage, and Jackson's funny, and he looks down at the ground and he goes, "Man," he goes, "I don't know if I should go home and write more material or if I should just quit, because I'm never going to be that good."
Oh, poor self-confidence.
No, but that's the drive,
Right.
And I was just boom. It's these people that think, there's another thing, comics that think that they're killing.
Right.
I've heard people kill. Comics need to adjust their ears.
Sure. Yeah.
Because
They become their own best fan.
they're the destruction that I've seen, bodies.
Right.
It's almost like Burr's just punching you. dude.
Burr's a
It's just-
monster. He's an animal.
Yeah, it's tough though, I think, with stand-up, because now the way that entertainment has become so disposable and it's so easily accessible that I think comics are, and this isn't Burr, I'm talking about just comics in
Right.
general, they're rushing material now.
Sure, no doubt.
These specials are coming out too quick.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you should...
Bill Burr does them every 2 years.
Yeah.
But, a lot of comics are doing them once a year.
I almost think that it should be once every 3 years. That's my personal opinion, because you can cut so much more and make the other stuff so tight.
So let me just plant this seed for you about Sam Tripoli.
Yeah.
How far away is California from here? 7,000, 5,000, 3,000 miles?
3,000 miles.
Okay, so I hear...
I should text him.
Well, text him because I'm just now listening to him on Bert Kreischer's podcast, and he was also on Joey Diaz's podcast, talking about how he's got a Sunday night open mic. That it's his mic. So you should tell him, "Hey, I hear you I'm 3,000 miles away, and I'm told you have an open mic on Sunday. Can you get me on the set for next Sunday on the list, please?" But, he's playing right now. He's performing right now at the Improv tonight in Tampa Improv. Sam Tripoli. What I like about Sam Tripoli, which I like, is his crowd control, or his chaos control. He's really sharp. The other thing, let me give you my one story, because I have a few. I'm a promoter, so I meet a lot of great comics, but I went and saw Bert Kreischer last year. I guess it's the last day of the year. So this year, went and saw Bert Kreischer perform, and
The Machine, right?
yeah, the Machine. That's my dog right there, man. That's my favorite comedian. And he ended up inviting me the next day to a radio gig that he was doing the next morning, and I ended up hanging out with him poolside, got great pictures with him and shit. So that's the thing. And then one of the other things I plan on doing, because of that situation right there, I'm gonna get a van, a full-size van, and where the first bench seat is, I'm yoking that out, and I'm putting the old-fashioned seats, the 2 seats. You know what I'm talking about, like vans used to have, the captain's chairs. And then from that, I'm gonna build a wall behind those seats, and then the rest of the van's gonna be empty behind it. The wall, I'm gonna put the brick on it, put a small version of this on it, put a camera between the 2 front seats pointed back, and have a mobile podcast.
Wouldn't it be great if you could actually get smaller little versions of all of this stuff?
It might not be the exact one, but we're already in the works. And the deal is this, the way that...
You just said, "Where are you?"
Tell him what up, Sam. Sam Tripoli is on the phone with my boy right here. So there you go, universe. That's real shit right there. But if I would have had that van there, that day I hung out with Bert. As much as Bert loves podcasting, he would have jumped in the van with me and done 5 minutes. You know what I mean? So that's the next little project I plan on getting hammered out, is to have a mobile podcast van. And then, oh, by the way, behind the wall where it's all empty, it's going to be a small apartment so that I can get $15 rent at the COA while I'm out and about. That's how we roll, goddamn it. That's the immigrant son in me. But, all right, so Doug Stanhope story, and then we're gonna get cooking on to the other half. This is gonna be a long one tonight.
Yeah, the Doug Stanhope story is pretty simple. I was about 1.5 years into doing comedy, and my buddy Troy Conrad, he's the one. Have you seen all the black and white photos that come out of the Comedy Store online?
Yeah, no.
There's a series. They actually had an opening for him, and Troy is a really funny guy, and he got into photography. Well, at that time, he had known Doug for years, and so he said, hey, I'm going to feature for Doug over in Arizona, like Phoenix area. And I went, oh, well, this is the first Christmas I haven't had a girlfriend, so I'm going to come out. Dude, I drove to Phoenix because he said, yeah, I can get you in. And so, by the way, Doug, as you already know, has the weirdest audiences ever. It's a bunch of biker dudes and a bunch of comedy nerds. It's so hilarious just to see the difference between the two. Anyway, the first comic goes up, and it's a woman named Lynn. And so she does well. She gets off. My buddy Troy's on stage, so I could talk to her while he's on. And so I casually mentioned that I do comedy, but whatever. And then she says, hey, do you know who I am? And I said, oh yeah, you're Lynn. You're just on the comic on stage. She goes, oh, I'm Lynn Shawcroft. I'm Mitch Hedberg's widow.
Right.
And or wife at that point. And so she said, how about this? At the end of the show, I'm gonna grab Doug and I'm gonna have you do comedy for him. And I went, what?
That's cool.
Yeah. So I end up doing stand-up. Once again, so nervous, obviously, right? I get done, and he comes up with his manager. I think his name was Brian Chaley or something like that. And they said, hey, if you drive down to Tucson the next day, we'll give you a spot on the show.
Nice.
And so I drove down to Tucson. I did it. It was the best set that I had ever had in my life at that point. And to the point where I called my mom when I got off stage, and I was like, Mom, I'm doing something right. I can't. Like, he asked me how long I've been doing this, and it's great. He says I'm really funny, and I mean, it's Doug Stanhope, Mom. And she goes, who's that? And she'll never know.
Right.
And so that's how I got to open that time for Doug. And then after that, I think there were a couple times on MySpace, maybe, or
taking it back,
beginning of Facebook.
Back in the day.
Yeah, that we exchanged a couple things about books or whatever, talking about something, but we never developed a close friendship.
Right.
But I saw him one other time, other than that, and I think he remembered me twice, I should say, because I think Troy featured for him again, and that's when Doug gave me, I think he realized how big of a fan I was. He gave me all of his CDs.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, and DVDs and everything. And then I think I saw him one other time after that, but I haven't been to a show since.
Right.
Yeah, so those are my big stories. And then the Joe Rogan story that I have is it's really simple. He had gotten banned from the Comedy Store for a period of time. So he went and did a show, sold it out. It was a party at the Upright Citizens Brigade on Franklin. Afterwards, it's so weird how you can have access to a comic. Mm-hmm. But him and I, we just started talking about, legal and illegal ways to open your mind. And he mentioned the sensory deprivation chamber. Mm-hmm. I finally did it. I've gone twice, and I recommend it to everybody. It's.
I told you that story about the sensory deprivation tank here, right?
Oh, is there one?
Well, no, go ahead, finish up, and I'll tell you the story. Not here, local, that close, but it's about an hour from here.
Yeah. And so when I saw him, I don't think he remembered me, but it was probably like 2 years later. I went up and I was just like, hey, I talked to you outside the UCB, the sensory deprivation. I did it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But a very down-to-earth dude.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, here's something I've noticed too, and I don't think this holds true across the board, but the funnier a comic is and the more real they are on stage, the cooler they are off stage.
Absolutely.
And
that's not the way it is with most. I mean, everyone.
Yeah.
But there are quite a few that are definitely DTE, down-to-earth people that are, like, real.
And that aren't talking through you.
Right.
That are talking to you. That's an important thing.
So, there was a chance once upon a time that I was considering buying a gym.
Oh, really?
And while I was looking, I'm crazy about the podcast, so the conversation comes up about sensory deprivation, so I look on eBay, and I found one in North Carolina used for less than $5,000. I was like, all right, well, so I do a little research, and over by UCF, there was a sensory deprivation play. Shout out Total Zen, because they've done some good work with me in the past and stuff. So I went out there, and I set up a 2-hour session, first time.
That's how long mine was.
Yeah. So I get there, and the owner wasn't there. So I'm waiting, and it's getting about 20 minutes before it's time for me to go out. So I step out, and I had a big-ass hoot rolled of Turkish blend. And I go down to the end of the building, and I'm looking around, and I see this tree, and I kind of look underneath the tree, and sure as shit, there's a little spot set up where people are sitting under the tree, smoking a little reef before they do whatever it is they're doing. So I was like, oh, how convenient. So I snuck up underneath the tree, smoked a big fatty, went back in there, sat down. Now, I dress like this all the time. So in comes this dude, and it's a yoga studio, so it's like ding, 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 this, incense burning, these little college girls from UCF, and then here I am sitting like this with my hat, and the guy's looking at me, and he comes over, and he's like, you're my 6 o'clock, and I'm like, yeah. He goes, you booked down for 2 hours. I go, yeah. Because you ever done this before? I go, no. He goes, so what's up? Why are you here? And I'm like, well, it just so happens, and I told him 2 hours away, I was thinking about buying it, putting it in the gym, and I said, I was listening to my podcast, my man Joe Rogan told me how good they are, blah, blah, blah. He starts laughing, and I go, what's so funny? He said, exact same podcast 5 years ago is the reason why you're here right now. He says, I own the jiu-jitsu studio next door. And that was like the very beginning where I was like, wow, because again, it was an old podcast. And I'm like, wow, that's the power
word of mouth
of the podcast. Well,
yeah.
The podcast revolution is now, like, I'm jumping into it way late, but the podcast revolution is this weird conundrum that the big business and everybody doesn't understand. It's like, Joe Rogan has more people listening to what he says on one episode than CNN has in their entire month. You know what I mean? So it's like a weird dichotomy that they're having these issues with. That's why big TV is failing. That's why all this stuff is sinking. Who would have ever thought, So that was when the whole idea about let's do this, let's get this podcast going, because I wanted to see what I felt like was so unique about the podcast thing in general is the power of influence. If I could steer people to think differently because of a conversation you and I had. So we're almost done with this first hour. I'm going to flip it. There's no time frame, so we're fine. But now we're going to start talking about the ironic twist about going to LA. All right, and you might not even know what I'm talking about. This is the thing I'm talking about. People are packing up and leaving to go to LA, chasing the dream. And what I feel like is, perhaps, not saying that I'm shitting on anybody's dream, but I'm saying, hey man, before you pack up and haul ass because you think that's the option, let me hear what it is. Like you were talking about cost of living, trying to buy a house, the idea, and then on top of that, the amount of time it took before you got in front of real people to do comedy versus here. And not saying that this is the answer, I'm just saying, like, what my take is, I want to develop the Southeast so that when I go west, I'll be going there with a resume and, hopefully getting on. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna flip this a hair early just because this is new. I'm just thinking it's cool. So let's talk about LA, cost of living, the kind of lifestyle you live in LA. From when I talked to you, it didn't seem like you were like, I just love everything about California, you know.
I think I'm realistic about it.
That's the point. I would, like, in case somebody's fixing to sell off and get out of their house that they can afford, and they're in a city that's big, and there's open mics every night, and there's opportunities, and then they pack up and they leave to go somewhere where now they're not established, they don't know, nobody knows who you are. Tell us about what it's like when you go to LA.
Well, I think one of the big things is that, and I'm at fault for this too, is that you have to understand that if you want a big name in comedy, the entire thing is to become a draw, right? More than likely, to become a draw, it's going to become from something that is not your stand-up.
Okay.
Something else has to draw people in, and then people can sustain themselves with stand-up, right?
Correct.
We were talking about how, on a small level, you could look at someone like Dustin Diamond Screech, right? How he can play all these small little towns for the rest of his life because of Saved by the Bell. And I haven't taken advantage of LA as far as acting or writing. But you kind of, I think, if you move to LA, one thing that you have to do, because I would say if you really have no desire to do that, you're not going to take advantage. I heard New York might be a better situation as far as if you want to be in a big city. Because you're going to be competing against, it's Top Gun. And it's Top Gun. Like, I remember I took my buddy from Tacoma, who used to do stand-up. That's how we met. He came down to visit. He's actually gotten more acting from living in Tacoma, Washington than he did when he was living in LA. So we go to the Comedy Store, and he looks around, and he goes, "Why aren't you on the show?" And I just was like, "Oh my God, dude!" Right? Like, you have no clue. So I took him and I showed him the list of who's performing that night, and it was Chris D'Elia, Whitney Cummings, Joe Rogan, Judd Apatow, Gerard Carmichael.
Because and I think what I see, and what people might fail to understand is the open mics are being taken by the monster comics.
Well, that wasn't,
or not so much open mic, but like the opportunities for regular civilians to go in to develop a craft, to rise up like they do in their other cities. But you can only get, I mean, I'm only guessing, you can only get to a certain point because all of these great comics live in that area.
All of them.
So they're doing, I mean, what is it, the comedies, what is it?
15 minutes.
No, but is it like $15?
Then they get paid $15.
Right, so Joe Rogan, Chris D'Elia, Whitney Cummings, all this lineup, and they're taking the $15 because they're working their material. It's like they're just flexing. It's like going to the gym.
And then also understand that you have the Comedy Store, the Laugh Factory, and then you have the Improv.
Right.
These are all within 7 to 10 minutes of each other.
Now, is that California 7 minutes? Because
yes.
So they're really like a block apart.
Yes.
So they're like right there.
Oh my God, dude! You can walk from the Laugh Factory to the Comedy Store, you know. And then if you really wanted to, you could go technically from the Comedy Store and walk down to the Improv, if you didn't have a car. But you got to understand, it's like, so somebody like Gerard Carmichael or Chris D'Elia, they will go sometimes from the Comedy Store to the Laugh Factory, then to the Improv.
Right.
They've just taken 3 spots.
Right, and they don't need to sign up, right?
No. We're talking shows, and we're talking real deal.
Oh no, these are like shows, but
yeah, real deal shows, because those are the 3 biggest clubs. Because all the way, I'm trying to give, if anyone's looking at this, these are the major clubs over here. If you're looking at a map of Los Angeles, and Pasadena's over here. This is where the Ice House. That's the closest thing to not being in LA. Then you have Flappers, which is kind of in between. But that's more very suburban. They tend to cater to a very different kind of audience there.
Is that an alt room?
An alt room? No.
So I don't know.
I
don't even know what an alt room is. I just hear about it on podcasts.
More to like East Los Angeles, and that's a completely different thing.
Right.
You know, and So, I mean, the main goal, right, is you want to get that quality stage time. That's the only way you can grow as a comic. You can't, it's very hard to, we've talked about, you can't judge a material by comics because they'll let you go
the worst.
Way too dirty and way too dark.
Right.
And so you have to play in front of real people, but when you have the best being able to take that stage time,
right?
You know,
Ron White's out there. I mean, geez Louise. I mean, gosh.
Yeah, it's
monsters.
Yeah. Oh, and that's not even mention the Comedy and Magic Club, which is in Hermosa Beach, where I think I told you, it's like I was sitting there and I'm sitting next to Larry Miller.
Right.
You know,
crazy.
And it was like, my God, I remember one of that guy's jokes from the 80s.
Right.
Still, I love the joke. I'm going to paraphrase it real quick. He goes, I broke up with a girl, and she said, you're never going to find anyone like me. He goes, I hope not.
Right.
I've never broken up with someone and said, hey, do you have a twin? Something like that.
Right, you know?
Right. But yeah, I've seen so many killers go there. And so it's very tough. And you see people that are very funny trying to break into these places. And that's why you need the extra heat. You need the extra heat of, hey, so some big name comic really likes you. You know what I mean? And is putting pressure on a club to get you spots. Or you need that Hollywood heat. Or you can have the heat too of, man, this guy's loved. This is a weird kind of one. This comic is loved by other comics. That's a certain type of heat. So if you have all of that, that helps you potentially get.
Well, and that's my whole plan of having, 1 million followers on social media. That's my angle. My angle is to build the podcast up and book my own theaters and and have a management team and an agent that goes ahead of me and breaks the ground for me. Saying that, by the way, you said you don't know how many people see this. As of right now, we have 3 subscribers on my show.
Oh, I didn't know.
3. Right, no, but 3. Oh, we're up to 5. We're up to 5 people are guaranteed to see it, but
and 37 views. 37
views. So that's where we're at. So that's who sees it. So, but
it was very hard to give you an example of when I hear people moving from other areas.
Right.
I know this one female comic who's really funny, and she moved, to LA probably maybe like 8 months ago, something like that. And she goes, "It is so hard for me, Chris." She goes, "I used to get paid once a week to host an open mic, and I would get paid $100 to host an open mic." She goes, "Now I'm paying $5 at an open mic where comics are staring at their phones." And just that's
the part I'm trying to bring to light. So continue.
Yes.
Not to hate. I'm just saying, prepare and plan.
Yeah, that's and you never know what's going to happen. I think everyone can move to LA and everyone thinks they're going to be walking down the street or it's going to be something like that. And it's some people, it really is like that.
Right.
Dude, I have an actor friend who, if you saw his IMDb page and if I showed you a picture, you'd be like, oh, I've seen that guy and stuff. He was one of those people that, I'm not kidding, from the moment he got to LA, he started booking stuff within a month. He had never even taken an acting class.
Right.
It was just one of those things.
Right.
So he actually doesn't know. He's older now, early 50s, and this is a slowed down time for him because the roles aren't coming.
Right.
He's never experienced.
Right.
Now, granted, he saved his money. He's been smart with it, but he's never experienced I may only do one TV show, 12 episodes in a year. And so he was working all the time.
Right. 2 things that I see that jump out at me.
Yeah.
I open up there's a certain club that I'm in with again, as the promoter side of it, I got in with the owner and he calls me to open, and I do a lot of pro bono work because I'm trying to build rapport and I want to meet comics and I want to get them on my show. So I go and I open at this place and they have a group of guys that are from Comic View and BET, and they come in and they are the headliners. And I'll open up for them. And what the deal is people assume that because they're on TV, they're making big money. But the reality is like they might get a bump that day, but they have to basically grind to make every day's bills.
Yes.
And what I found was, and this was where I learned a valuable lesson early in, where a super famous comedian, I mean, like all over television, all the time on BET and stuff. He came in. There was two of them, one from Baltimore, one from New York. They came in, they performed. The deal is, and this is how they do it, you get a round trip ticket plus $100. The round trip ticket comes in either Thursday or Friday and leaves out Sunday. They come in Thursday or Friday, they do the show that night, then they jump in their rental car at 2 o'clock in the morning when the show's over, and then they haul ass down to Fort Lauderdale or West Palm, because the next day they'll have a gig that night there and maybe do a second one. They pre-order it, and in an urban situation, because this is an urban club, there's a lot of little towns, oddball little towns, like things you've never heard of, the Shores, Mount Dora, Crystal River, that have these little urban rooms that they'll pay him. So like, I gotta go down here, I'll get 100 here, 100 there. So by the time he's come back around and come back to OIA on Sunday, he might have made, $1,200 minus the ticket price. He's replaced the standard 8 to 5, 40-hour-a-week cubicle or corporate gig for a gypsy life, but it's still $500-600 a week, And then when you're on TV, maybe you get a little bump. And because of the TV, and that's another thing, I had a young man here I was interviewing, was performing side by side with Lil Wayne, but Lil Wayne didn't talk to him. He didn't get a bunch of money for it or whatever, but it was exposure to get it out there. You know what I mean? So a lot of times, especially in my family, because I got a fucking bunch of business geniuses, I'm the black sheep of the family. So I got all these business gurus, and every time I say, oh yeah, I went and opened up, and they're like, well, did you get paid? And I'm like, well, it's kind of hard to say. It's kind of hard to say, yes, I got paid, but I didn't get paid money. I got paid with, time on the job, that people see you, blah, 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 and you build your rapport, blah, blah, blah. So the next thing I'm going to do, and we'll talk about it, I'm hoping that as I'm sure you'll visit Mom again, and we'll prep, plan, and prepare and have it set up in a way that if you're interested, you come, we'll do a real show somewhere, videotape the whole thing as content. You'll get paid for your services, but then we'll also give you your set, and then we'll put the whole set out online as a special. And it's a certain comics, because like a lot of comics are like, well, I don't want my material out there, so you can pass on it. But the thing about it is everything I've been putting out so far, my overall dream is to put out hour-long specials for free, because I believe you'll get like another thing, like if you're you're on my show, the universe gets.
Before I forget this, a pretty really funny comic. And it was something that he said, and this pertains to young comics coming up, is I asked him, I featured for him, and I was like, hey, do you have any advice? And he goes, I only got one thing. He goes, you're funny. Okay. He goes, all that's going to do is get you a meeting. Mm-hmm. He goes, when that meeting happens, be prepared. And that means, dude, you have to have stuff other than comedy. Mm-hmm. If you're not doing that, you're not going to reach the possibility, because then you're at the whim of everything else working in your favor.
Right.
You think, and that's just way too tough. There was a comic, actually, a really funny comic that I met at the Older Guy Comedy Magic Club, was a head writer for Leno. And he said, he was telling me how he screwed up. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, shoot. Dude, he did Aspen with Ray Romano. Mm-hmm. Both of them came out with deals with HBO. He goes, here's the difference. He goes, I sat around for HBO to call.
Right. And Ray was working.
Ray was already talking about how he wanted to make a TV show about his own life.
Right.
Then.
Right.
So, because they will give you those shots.
Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is the difference now. Like, if you go to LA, like if we can find, like I'm shitting on the whole, like don't go, but like if you go there and you sell a what is it, a script or whatever, I don't know what it is, but you're like you're saying that extra something.
Yes.
How that, because you told me you already were writing and you're doing a little. Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's because I had an idea, and I was talking to a guy who had written on a few TV shows, and then he 6 months later asked me if I'd written it, and I said, I don't know how to write. And then he said, hey, you can't go out on the road because we'll work every weekend on this, but I'll help you write it. So we wrote it. Now the thing that sucks for me, I guess, is that he did sell a TV show, a different one,
right.
but he still has ours,
right?
And so,
well, I hear that's what 100 to 1. You put out 100 opportunities, and maybe one will come in.
Yeah.
So you got to constantly be.
Yes, you can't sit on anything, and I think that TV shows is where most people are going to be able to sell something because they can buy it and not do anything.
Right,
with it.
and I hear that happens a lot.
Yeah, but to be able to, because that. You have to have that thing, right? If people come to see you, they need to know who you are.
Right.
And so, yeah, just make sure to write. And then also, being really funny or this is what sucks. Because I got into comedy to do comedy.
Right.
I didn't get into it to act. I didn't get into it to be a writer. But now I see the business as a whole thing.
You got to have multiple irons in the fire, right?
Yeah, this is going to suck hearing this from a comic.
Come on.
To people that really care about comedy.
This is real shit.
Dude, you only have to be funny enough.
That's right.
To sell the show. And it sucks because you're just like, sometimes you'll see someone, you're like, oh, why is that person really famous or whatever? And you go, because they were just funny enough to get the meeting, and then to be able to sell the show because they were like, oh, that's kind of what we're looking for. That's another thing, dude. Like a lot of the times they feel like, we feel like this will be popular. Right. They're not. They may not, unless you're a bigger name that they trust. They're not gonna. It's gonna be hard for them to buy something that is from unknown people or whatever.
Right. Plus, I hear that it's a brutal grind too.
Demographic.
I mean, the people who make the decisions, they're not personally involved in the project like that, and like the way that. I mean, I only hear that it's like to be judged by people and to constantly be told no, and it's like, God, how do you keep the motivation?
Yeah. And also the product that you come up with, be very prepared, especially with the more unknown you are, to it not resembling.
Not even close.
Not even close. Dude, I have a buddy who sold, and it was made into a movie. Sold, movie was made. He went to the premiere, walked out and went, that's not the movie I wrote. His name is on it. But here's the thing, and this is going to go for younger people. People behind the scenes know that.
Right. So
they know that the movie was rewritten a bunch, and they've seen the people behind the scene know if someone's original script was, but they won't talk about it. Right. Like Rian Johnson, who wrote The Last Jedi, he's not going to tell you about his original draft. Right. They probably had 12 writers go through that damn thing.
No doubt.
But also, no matter I think what it is, doing stuff that makes you feel good. So if it is one of those things where you're like, hey, I'm 2 years in, I want to move to LA, move to LA, dude. Live your life. There's no path that all people could do is kind of give you some road signs, or because if you ask anyone that's successful how they did it, and a lot of them just go, and they're actually being honest, because you never know, like you said, with the irons or whatever, what's really gonna. I mean, Joe Rogan. It's weird when you think of UFC, Fear Factor, and partially a little bit of the Man Show, right? He's got the fan base from that, but if he didn't do the podcast, where would he be?
Right, no doubt, no.
And that because that podcast brought
it solidified everything.
Yeah,
everything.
Same with Maron. I used to go and watch, and this is just. True. I used to go and watch Maron when he couldn't sell out the UCB theater. They would have to blanket pull the black curtains on both sides of the stage. Right. UCB theater on Franklin, not big at all. Right. But that was before he started the podcast. Right. And then he did the podcast, and it was just, that guy plays theaters now. And now has a TV show because of it.
Right. And that's my whole, I often talk about it. I don't know if did I tell you the Ricky Smiley story?
I think so.
Right, so Ricky Smiley came to Orlando, sold out a theater, killed, left, and nobody knew he was here. Because he used his own fan base. You see what I'm saying? And Gary Owens just did that in our town. He's a BET comic white dude with a black wife. That's his famous spiel. And he murdered Il Cala.
Dude, think of how he fits into that demographic, right? So he's playing to primarily black audiences, right? But most white comics would be, they're afraid to even play black rooms.
Well, no doubt.
Right? So this is a guy that not only goes into it, but understands. I think even his wife is black, right? So it's a white guy talking almost from an outsider's perspective that's somehow inside as well. Dude, there's no other Gary Owens.
Right, no doubt. No doubt.
To me, I think that was interesting when I saw like him. I watched one of the specials and everything. Him, and I think Burr mentioned once that he came up and he played a lot in black rooms.
Well, Burr's got a black wife too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right.
And his best friend was the black guy, Patrice O'Neal. Yeah. And he was on the Dave Chappelle show. So like, he's always been a weird, like he's a redhead that always gravitated towards hanging out with urban dudes, just like I've always hung out with black dudes.
Here's the thing I've noticed about playing primarily black audiences. They're the hardest audience, especially a black woman. But because they don't want to be sold anything.
Right.
You try to sell them a joke, it's this.
Right.
But the more real you are and the more entertaining you are, that's why, but no one will give it up to you more than a black audience.
No doubt.
That's the trade-off. They could be the toughest, or they will be getting up out of their seats just, I love you.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite thing, I didn't know it was a compliment at first, but whenever I hear is, you stupid.
Yeah.
At first I was like,
you sound stupid.
Yeah, I thought, oh, I'm
that must be a southern thing. We use the shit out of that around here.
Yeah, and then I found out that was a compliment, you know?
I jokingly say, because we're right dead center in the middle of Florida, so Orlando's on the East Coast, Tampa's on the West Coast. And I've been working Orlando since January. And then I connected, shout out Zobo69, one of my regulars that comes out and works out. He's been on the show. He's a strong comic with a lot of roots and connections out, black dude out in Tampa. When you go on Facebook and you look on the comedy scene, one of my jokes about Tampa comedy is you'll see an ad for an Orlando show, like, you know, Leaky Cauldron Tuesday night downtown Orlando, and it has like an intellectual, snarky movie cover, you know, something that, like, you know, is cerebral. And then you get an advertisement from Tampa for a Tampa comedy show, and it's a black guy with gold teeth, 245s, and a pit bull. Come laugh, motherfucker! You know, and I'm like, yes, that's the room I want to go to.
You know, it's funny. I always say that I could tell usually how much fun the show is going to be by if I see a pickup truck. The more pickup trucks more trucks, I guess you'd see, that I see in a parking lot for a show, the more excited I get.
Well, that's a West Coaster right there. We're like, pickup trucks, because that's all we have around here is pickup trucks. That's hilarious. So I want to start talking about teaching next, but let me just finish this up by saying this.
Okay.
I believe, good, bad, or indifferent, the fact that what I've seen based on the 2 times I've seen you perform at my room on Thursday nights, OBI, Gladiator Workout Room, holla. So anyhow, Thursday night, 8 p.m. 16286 Highway 441, Summerfield, Florida, the Villages. Anyways, when you worked out those 2 rooms, and again, the People's Champ, Jesse Chanus, he's a popular one on our show, he and I were talking about it, like, I feel like the pressure that you're under is producing a better comic. I think you'd be a better comic based on where you came from. I feel like watching you, I feel like a sloppy comic. Because it's like so easy around here to be, you like it, like maybe it's the southern, you know, ooh, we're just slower, we talk slower. But the thing is like when you came, like, especially when I see New England, LA, big city comics, they're fast, they're sharp, their comedies, like, you know, it's there's no fat. You've trimmed it all out, you know, and it was a tight set. And the fact that you are still where you're at in LA, I think, again, and I'm going to say it back again, like if you come back in a year, we'll put on a show and we'll do a half and half shirt where it'll be like you on one side, me on the other. I'll open for you and we'll do a show somewhere in Ocala or one of these towns. Get 300 seats, pack them out. We'll do a cut on it. But the thing is I believe you would smash and kill. And that's why I was getting ready to say I think you should get a podcast, like even an audio podcast. Something that you can vent weekly, build your following weekly all over the world. And then that way, when it's time for you to go to another, like, sounds to me like you set up in LA, you get good, and then you go outside, you drive an hour out, and try to go to another bar, like in a smaller town. But I don't know what that means. Like for me, it means down to, up the Crystal River or down to Mount Dora, because there's small towns that are like population. Shoot, we got one in February, Newport Richey. That sounds so small. It's probably 8,000 people in the town. We have 3 touring comics that are going to be there for a MS, muscular sclerosis, whatever. I went around the corner to the first bar I came to that had a liquor bar. It was a big chicken wing place. Country is collard greens. I went in and I said, hey, this is what we're doing, and we're going to get paid. After we get done with that, we're going to run over there and do a show there and get paid twice, because in that town, oh shit, nobody ever comes around to do comedy. Come on out. It's weird, So I was like, okay, so I'm going to get double booked for that night. Like I said, it seems to me that your comedy is sharp. Fuck, you're one of the funniest guys that have been through my show. And I say that to everybody who's in here that's coming to my show. But seriously, it's dynamic comedy, and it just amazes me. Like, I feel like if you left LA, went to another city, you'd probably be super successful. But it sounds to me like your deck is stacked against you so much when you get there.
Well, no, I think it's tough, man. I was talking to my brother on the phone today, and I said I feel more unsure of the choices that I make now than I did when I was 21.
Sure. I think it happens for everyone when you get older.
Because there's, it's just, thanks for echoing that, man. It's because I look at it and I go, it seems at times you got to choose the best path for you. And that's why I'd say anyone that wants to move to LA, move to LA. Mm-hmm. Whether it's immediately or when you hit year 10. But, everywhere, everything is a catch-22
right.
or a,
vicious cycle.
Or there's something that there's no clear-cut perfect path. Like I wish someone could tell me,
Every person I've had here, I've asked, how do you get into comedy? Every single person has a different answer. Yeah. Every single person.
And because I saw it, man, I was starting to do a lot of road work to the point that it's so funny. It kills me now. That a guy that has a TV show right now was talking crap behind my back, which I found later on because another comic told me, he's like, hey, I don't want to start anything, but blah, blah, blah.
But let me start something.
But no, he was telling me that because he was actually the comic that told me was being really nice. Mm-hmm. But because I was doing so much road work, but it didn't matter. But I was doing a lot of road work, and then I was substitute teaching. And I got to a point where I remember I was headlining my first club, and I went, oh God, the amount of money that I made tonight is going to be the same amount that I make next year. And but I don't even know if I'll make it next year because I don't even know if they'll book me again.
Right.
Or if they'll even have a spot open, right?
Right.
And I just went, oh crap. And then I went, do I want to be a road dog? And I've been around so many road dogs that aren't a draw.
Right.
And there's been a couple that have been really nice. Now if you're a draw, it's different, right? Man, they don't like their lives. All of them are, almost all of them were divorced.
Oh yeah.
All of them just chain smoking and just drinking, trying to get all their free drinks, and it's like trying to numb the pain every day.
Yeah.
Because no matter who you are, at least for me, I realize like how important it is for me to have a home. And when you're some of these guys, to keep a roof over an ex-wife's or their wives and their kids, they're on the road like 40 weeks out of the year.
Yeah.
or more. And then when they're home, you're in a constant state of going for that next gig. And so I have no idea where my road is going to lead me.
Right.
So I said, you know what? Screw this. What's something that and then I ended up writing that, and then I got a long-term teaching assignment. And I went, my God, what if I can do both? Then I don't have to worry about money. It's something that I enjoy doing.
Right.
And then I can still go out on the road during the breaks.
Right. There's a young man, you just sparked something. He attends UCF. He's been to my room. He is a murderer. I mean, he's like Tosh, who is also a UCF alum. I mean, a murderer. It's so funny because he gets paid really well to hit the road, but his parents only let him go on break because he's in college.
Wow.
So it's like he just comes off of the summer break, was on tour the whole time. People will go crazy for him. Then he gets back and has to go back to class. And I want him on the interview because I'm like, how does that work? It's almost like being the best football player in your school. It's like how do you deprogram the game? Coming off of the road, being a murderer, hanging out with all these great comics.
Yeah, I will say, especially with that kid, it sounds like his parents really making sure that he also keeps his feet on the ground.
No doubt.
Because there's so many...
you of all people can see
because there's so many people that you see, dude, people gotta understand, there's people with Netflix specials living on people's couches.
No doubt.
Living on somebody's couch, and they have a Netflix special.
Right.
And you're like, what? There's nothing inherently wrong with that, you know, but I think to protect yourself, it's weird. I can't believe this is coming. You have to make sure to cover some bases, you know, and then there are some people that have said, I wanted to make sure I had no backup plan so that I would go full bore with
Yeah, Will Smith,
guess what?
I get it. That was his famous
thing. But guess
thing.
what? You only hear that coming from the people that it works for.
Exactly. Fucking Will Smith, okay.
Yeah, Will. So you just look at it and you go, okay, what can I do that's in my power to make the life that I want? Because I don't want to struggle anymore, dude.
No doubt.
To me, like when I was just getting by doing stand-up and putting all these miles on my car, and my buddy who did it even longer than I did, because we literally started at the same time. We served in the same platoon, Vietnam vet kind of conversations. And he's the one that basically came off the road now. Dude, he has over 300,000 miles on his car. I think probably 250 is from comedy.
No doubt.
And so understanding what are your goals, that I think is a big thing. What are your goals? What will make you happy? And then understanding that so much is out of your control that you gotta kind of be smart about it. But I say all this now, but if I was 22 and I was hearing some 39-year-old dude that lives in Los Angeles visiting his family in the Village, I'd be like, oh no, I'd turn into Bill Burr. I'd be like, the guy's just a loser, you know?
Yeah, right.
Just sitting there.
Give it a little Bill Burr-esque.
Sitting there watching Oprah with his mother. You know what I mean? He's not a killer.
I talk about it all the time. I said, cover band. I would love to be able to walk up and be like, North Carolina, shit, and start Bernie Mac's whole routine. I mean, I would love to. You know, I would just love to be able to do somebody else's routine that I love because I love the comedy. You know, but cover bands can do that, comics can't. And another thing is comics can't have a hit. I mean, you can have like Bert Kreischer's The Machine. It's a blessing and a curse.
You know what Regan does? Regan, because people at his shows will actually yell out for bits. What he does apparently is he actually tells him, I'll do my regular set that I'm working on, and then for 15 or 20 minutes at the end, I'll do some of your favorite jokes.
Right.
To me, that is awesome.
Well, you know what Bert Kreischer does now? He does Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday before he flies out, they do an extra special show. Or if he flies out Monday, they do what's called a call out of work Monday. And then everybody goes back to the Improv at 10 in the morning, and they just wow out. And he'll tell all the stories, fucking hang out, chill with you, the whole shebang. But you know that for somebody like me who has no schedule anymore, that's the one I'm waiting on, and I hope to have my van ready by then. So we're like, come on out, do the show with me. But I mean, all right. Let's talk about school teaching.
Was that the ironic twist, or did we?
The ironic twist to me was for the people who are selling everything they own, who are getting paid as comics here, and they go there and they hit a wall, and then on top of that, the twist to me is your rent goes from $800 a month here to $3,000 a month there.
Well, no, rent. If you have a roommate, you can get I would say you'd probably spend about $1,000
a month
per person. Yeah.
Per person.
Per person.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Everything doubled. As far as your overhead doubles.
You're saying $800 total for a place.
That's what he had for the whole apartment with a roommate. And now they go over there.
Imagine, you're paying $1,000 instead of $500, and you're making the same amount of money as you were on the road. So now you're just doing your road work.
Right.
So many.
But on top of that, like the one guy who was booked solid here in the Southeast, now is going to go and be one of a bunch of other niche comics and have to reestablish himself there.
That's why so many people, I think, move to LA and then they get involved with. So you'd be surprised how many comics get involved with other behind-the-scenes stuff,
right?
From producers,
writers, and
it's amazing, because you want to end up having until comedy. Hey, you could even look at it this way. Kevin Hart loves doing stand-up, but his day job is being a movie star.
Right. But I also heard a guy say, I remember giving him money for the electric bill, and that's that whole, the other thing that like I said, the ironic twist to me, I jokingly said, is like the music video for Welcome to the Jungle, except comedians are ugly. So if you're like a really pretty girl who wants to become an actress, by the end of the music video, she's now a prostitute. So what happens for a bunch of ugly dudes that show up with jokes, and then, that's the whole thing. It's like, I feel like my idea was to conquer other places that are easy. Like I jokingly, I'm talking to a guy, one of my comics that does work.
Real quick, do you know who Nate Bargatze is?
Mm-mm.
Okay, Nate has had an hour special, right? Everybody thinks he lives in Los Angeles. He lives in Tennessee.
Right.
But when he has meetings, he just flies in
right.
for the meeting.
That's the way I would do it. That's totally the way I would do it.
And then if he sells the show, then guess what? He moves to LA.
Right, for X amount, and then he has his
major... It's like the guys in Colorado that did the TV show Those That Can't, or something like that. Mm-hmm. All those guys, all they did was just move to LA. They were a bunch of
totally what I would
Denver,
do.
Colorado comics.
And then with my show, the other thing that I'm doing is making connections now. So like, I had a gentleman from Colorado, funny fucking comedian, visiting his family in the Villages. We got connected. He came on the show, and now the vision is in the spring I'm going to go out just to check it out. Mm-hmm. And he has a room in the back. He says I normally have a little room that I rent to the snowbirds, to the guys for the skiing. He says, come out, I'll put you up for free, and we'll go hit rooms together. And he already has connection, and that's really all. Like, I have a guy who is he's negotiating contract right now with Branson, 1,600 seat theater, 5 days a week, gorgeous fucking theater, lights up, all cool and all that. And he would be like the resident comic. Like Vegas has their resident, he would be the resident comic. And again, my whole plan was just to go out there and do a set with him on his stage and videotape it for content. The guy, and that's the whole vision. Like, I would fly in, do my business, and then fly the fuck out, like Vietnam. You get in, get out. The other. Okay, so that was the ironic twist. Is like I said,
if you could ever, whenever you get comics that are really above, I would love to hear their perspective, because with my perspective, it's more on the outside looking in. Like, oh, dude, there's a new TV show coming out. I was watching it there with Benji Afalo and Little Esther. Do you know those two? Oh, dude, the Comedy Store regulars. Mm-hmm. And now they have a TV show that's through an app or something.
Right. That's the next thing, yeah.
And I was like, wait, a TV show through an app?
You know who... I don't know, he's a comedian. I'm assuming he's an alt comic. He's the big black guy with the afro who does sound effects.
Reggie.
Okay, Reggie Watts just did a show, all virtual goggles. So he's in an empty room doing his comedy, and 20,000 people watched him live. That's a whole nother thing.
Is it me, or when people said that they would watch Andy Kaufman and you either like kind of you got it, or you're just like, I don't get this. Dude, that's how I feel with Reggie. There's times where I've watched stuff and I'm like, this is amazing. Then other times I'm like, I guess I'm just dumb. I don't. But I mean by that is like he's so. That's why I don't consider. It's almost like he's this avant-garde.
Right.
Like, is he even a comic? It's like he's this.
He makes funny sounds with his mouth.
It's so different,
right?
That I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again.
Right, exactly. But the thing is can you imagine doing your show in an empty room in front of 20,000 people?
That's crazy.
And then the other thing is like the idea with the whole, which, everything is in its infancy. The idea with the goggles will be that like you will pay a fee and you can go courtside LA, and you're just sitting in your room, and you're sitting right next, and there's a camera set up at the chair, and it's a weird special camera.
Oh my God!
And so you put your goggles on, and you pay a fee for that, and you're courtside, and you look to your right, you look to your left, it's like you're there. And I'm assuming they do things with sound. I don't know. It's all in the future. Yeah. So the thing about it is that's what they're fucking with now. So the idea of doing different things now is like bigger than ever before. But before we get, I still want to talk about the school. We have plenty of time. We have actually 3 hours on the window.
Yeah, I'm literally.
This is totally new. I'm just watching, going cool. All the time flying.
It is completely new?
Yeah, this is brand new. This is the first time we're doing it because we change them out. Yeah. So I was like, fuck it, let's try it because this is a 1 hour time, like days of our lives. Dun dun. But there's
through the hourglass.
Exactly.
Like days of our lives.
There's a comedian named Raging Cajun, John Morgan. Been around 20 years. Sells out everywhere he goes. On YouTube, there's one thing that's 10 minutes long of him. That's it. Nobody's ever heard of it.
Crazy.
But when you watch him, I'm trying to, I'm a student, so I watch the set as strictly as where the laughs are, what's he doing, and it's the body language, the charisma. He's very Cajun. And he talks like that, but he's hilarious. But again, sells out everywhere he goes, never has to worry, and nobody's ever heard of him. He has hardly any social media at all, but he's old school, so that you still have that going. But, I can't imagine anybody going in to do stand-up comedy only. With the way, you're saying, irons in the fire. I'm using the podcast, and I'm doing comedy strict. I'm my baby, my goal is to be a great podcaster, and then the shows will come. What I'm actually looking to do, which we were doing at the end of the show when we were putting everybody up and talking, the next step I'm going to be looking to do as we develop this is the live podcast show, which is doing this in front of 80 people that paid for it. And then as we're talking, the next comic will come up. He'll do a 5-minute set, 10-minute set. We will joke in with him. Then he'll sit down and it'll be like Johnny Carson and a line of people and everybody, interacts. That's going to be the next thing after that. So that's why I can't imagine as eloquent as you speak, as intelligent as you are. And I think one of the things that keeps Burr sane when he's road dogging is that podcast that he does on his iPhone. There's no visual. It's just an audio podcast. You know what I mean? I really think and then you could develop a fan base while you're doing it. And also it's good therapy, I think, for Bill Burr.
The main reason why I haven't is because I'm still in some ways beholden to LAUSD, right? Because the only thing that I fear is that we live in a time where not everyone, but there's people in the world that either want to be offended or they want to take something that you say and misconstrue it. Mm-hmm. And how I'd want to do a podcast is to be completely free and open, like a Rogan, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so my only fear is that someone could take something and then go, can you believe he talks to children? No, I'm trying to understand what's going on in the news.
And it could revert back to your position in your school.
I would never do anything. I'm thoughtful enough. I think that, I don't know, someone said this. I said, I go, one of my fears is that I'm afraid that I'm being offensive. And I like what another comic said. They go, dude, you're thoughtful. Right. So don't worry about being offensive because and then Jesse said something, he goes, by the end of your joke, you've covered all the things.
Right, yeah.
So it's not like, you're not sitting there going, oh, I think this guy is mean or one-sided or anything. But Yeah, that's the only reason why I haven't done a podcast.
Well, a pseudonym. Do something, because like I said, I think you have
if I could do it over again, I had no idea who Jeff Dunham was, right?
Right.
So I would have changed my name immediately just because I of that. And I would have had a pseudonym, and it would have been. But even then, I know this one teacher comic, and she uses a completely different name, and a kid still found one of her clips, and they brought her in to talk to her.
Yeah, I guess that's option. I guess those are things you need to think about, especially because it seems to me that everybody out west is offended about something.
Is that the perception? Because we feel that.
Look, all the crying out and everybody who gets offended about all the stuff that they did, but it doesn't seem like there's any legitimate. Like, I don't see, except maybe there are adults, and when I say adults, I mean my age, your age, our age, 40 and ups. I don't see 40 and ups unless they're glomming onto something. It's mostly these impetuous youth that are smart, but they have no wisdom, and they just think that they can get outraged. And look, outrage only exists when you're young and your parents are paying your bills. And, to me, in the South, we got too many problems getting our electric bill paid. You know what I mean? It's hard to be offended, but it happens like the coffee bar fiascos that are going on in Orlando, where a black kid is being accused of being racist because he asked the white guy on his podcast to say the N-word with the A at the end instead of an ER. Oh. And he was a black guy. And I was like, how dare anybody that other than a black person even have an opinion? And on top of that, you were giving that white guy way too much slack with the A. I'm 42 years old. I don't say the word, and I can say it in a joke, and most of my comedy that I do is urban, but I'm just programmed not to say that.
That's funny with the A and the ER is that's how I knew at this one school that the kids liked me. It's because they would use the A at the end. Because when a kid didn't like you, he came with the hard ER, and that, man, even if you're white, it hurts.
Right.
You're like, dude.
So before we wrap up, before you get to your message to the universe, I would like for you to talk about the public school system. And the reason why is we were going to have a guest on the show, but he couldn't get in today. We'll have him on soon, and he'll just follow up with the same conversation. But when you were up here, not last week, but the week before, because he'd been here for visiting his family for the holidays, when we had our open forum at the end, and you started talking about the problems with the school board, the school system as a whole. And I closed my eyes, and it sounds like my friend who was supposed to be here tonight, who's also a tenure school teacher. And there's 3,000 plus miles separating you and him, and the story sounds the same. So my daughters we made the conscious decision to put my two kids in a charter school that's connected with the villages. So that school, like the commercial kitchen, I would go there and do try to tell people before you graduate to please consider the grocery store that I belong to with a culinary background. So I would go and recruit for my company at these, and I would do these speaking events at the school. And their kitchen at this school was nicer than my kitchen at the grocery store. In the deli. So the point is that is like that school breeds excellence, and it's strange, and that's why that school, people all over the country are coming here, going get jobs on village properties. The kids go to school.
I've actually talked to my mom about that.
So my kids were blessed, fortunate, lucky, blah blah blah. Now, if you took this, come out of the school and drove 3-4 miles down to Wildwood, it's a hard, small minority, big minority school, tough school, not a bad school, but it is what it is. You come over here, 8 miles, Lake Weir High School, metal detectors going into for the varsity, for the football games, that kind of thing. So, again, the charter school the last year that I went to the charter school, they had 5 black kids that graduated that year. And one of the ladies, the mother of one of the boys, worked with me. And she comes up and she goes, Mr. Alex, did you see my son? He was the one in the choir. Yes, ma'am. I know exactly who your son is. Because he was the only black kid in the choir. So the point is so for black kids in this area, they can consciously make that decision, but they go to a school where there's 5 of them in a school of 1,000. So now I'm asking you, as from the inside looking out, if there's anything, is there something? Are we heading in the wrong direction? Can it be fixed? What's going on? Let me get your take on it. Time to get serious for a second.
We spend more money on education per student, I think, than any other country. The problem is that I can see. Here's a good example: is in LA Unified. On-site personnel, right? They spend $2.4 billion a year for that's personnel that is attached to a school site that is working there day in and day out.
How much?
$2.4 billion, right? They spend, I think it's $2.1 billion on employees that are not attached to a school site.
Wow.
What do they do?
Right.
You actually will hear people with job titles that sounds like a Monty Python skit.
Right.
Well, I'm the assistant director to the ethics committee on social injustice for the morally depraved and blah, blah, blah. And what do? I really just justify my job. That's
Wow.
And most people, it's so hard at some schools that it's weird. It's like, I almost understand it though, because it can be very hard, whether you're a teacher or a principal at some of these schools, that you just want to get that cush job, but a lot of money is spent that way. And you hear from teachers, they say, it's not that we have a teacher shortage, because they keep saying that. We keep putting up more and more red tape and barriers to people that want to become teachers. And the amount of education, especially in California and New York compared to other states,
right,
that's needed, most people are going to look at the money that you can make and go, well, okay, I need a credential. That takes me a year. Then I need to get a master's. That's 2 years. That's 3 years. Why don't I just become a lawyer?
Very interesting, yeah.
And I'll make 3 times the amount of money. So you have that, and then the money actually doesn't match up. They do every year the cost of living versus how much teachers make, and they figure out like what your money is really worth.
Right.
California, I could say, especially in Los Angeles, is going to be at the bottom. To give you an idea, I know a teacher that moved 80 miles east of Los Angeles, and everyone was like, why do you want to move out to there? There's nothing going on. I'm like, you guys actually think that you have something going on in LA.
Right.
Nothing. You go home, you go to the gym, you're not going to the beach every weekend.
Right.
You're not doing all this. She moved, no joke, 80 miles east. That, they put her at the top of the pay scale. She makes a smaller school district.
Right.
Makes $10,000 more a year.
Right.
And she went from being in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment to owning a 2-story, 4-bedroom house with basically a mother-in-law unit that looks like a 1-bedroom apartment,
right,
attached, 3-car garage, a backyard that's so big, I looked at it, I was like, it's going to take you a decade to even figure out what to put in here.
It's a weird problem, I noticed. Like, I'm talking to him, the discussion about home ownership is such a I see it with stars in your eyes. They've got a yard, and it's like it's such an unrelatable issue. Like I'm so trying to wrap my head around it. I get it, but I still don't get it.
Because we live so close to each other,
right,
in LA that I think it becomes like this fantasy of like, homeowner. And that's just what people do.
Sure.
They just live in homes in other parts of the country, right?
Right.
And but so I think with education, man, and it's very tough because if you notice, one thing that teaching will tell you, and everyone will agree, right, is the apple never falls very far from the tree. And you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. They usually go hand in hand. But that can never be addressed in the press.
Right.
If someone comes out and says that, then it looks like they're blaming people for stuff. So really, as a teacher, you can only, and you can't blame a kid for what they come from. The kid doesn't know any better. you can only do two things as a teacher. You can either teach behavior, or you could teach content. I cannot do both simultaneously.
Right.
Well, if those test scores are so low, it's because teachers are having to teach behavior.
Right.
And correct behavior over. I've almost said to people where there's certain schools where I wish that you had a button that you could press. And I've seen one teacher go from deep at a school that was so terrible, because remember, I substitute taught.
Right.
So, and I saw him the next year at another school, and the sense of relief on his eyes, and he goes, I think I actually taught the amount of content, maybe a month's worth of content, that entire year.
How much of a letdown is that?
It's tough because you realize it's completely out of your control.
Right.
So what happens is
talk about deflation.
Yeah. So people that want to teach, and you feel bad for the kids whose parents who are coming from good parents, and it doesn't matter if they're poor, And so, but what ends up happening is teachers that really want to teach, the stress level is so high,
right,
that they just go, you know what? I'm not going to blow up, but I am going to slowly get myself out of this situation.
Right. And you had mentioned that when you talk about like movies that make heroicness out of teachers.
That is literally all propaganda. That's so people can feel good. You know what? You can make a difference if you just give it your best.
So to the universe, there are, Freedom Rider, these different stories that are told. Quit. She quit. The principal.
Jaime Escalante quit. Oh, Joe, whatever. I don't know what happened to him.
But so, like I said, I only base it on these, like you said, these flash in the pan, one moment in time, feel good story.
Yeah.
And then that story, the next chapter is they bounced as soon as they had a chance.
The part that they leave out with Jaime Escalante is that he walked into one of the greatest situations that you can walk into.
Now, what's the story of that? Because I don't know.
Jaime Escalante went into a terrible school, right?
Was it a movie made out of it?
Yes.
Which is what?
Stand and Deliver.
Stand and Deliver. Okay, right? Now I know he's on. Right.
He goes into that situation, and it's a terrible school, whatever. But those kids were actually gifted, and I've seen that. Where I had a teacher goes, this class right here of 8th graders or 6th graders, he goes, this is a once every decade to 20 years class.
Right.
Because every kid, even the kids that didn't care that much about school, were very nice kids.
Right.
So he walked into that. All they needed
was
that one guy that was like, you know what, I'll put in the extra effort.
Right.
And by that time, now I also understand the other teachers that had kind of given up.
Right.
Dude, if you've been in that situation, imagine if you've been in Vietnam for 20 years. How are you going to tell somebody, like, oh, you got to put more effort? Or you're like, I'm still going to be in Vietnam tomorrow.
Right.
But Jaime was brand new to teaching, right? So, but he ended up doing really well with those kids. And he was never able to even come even close to replicating those results. So yes, it had something to do with him. You can't take that away. Sure. But you also can't take away the fact that he had the LeBron James of children.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then he went on speaking tours. I think they said he ended up quitting because of all the stress, and he developed so many ulcers and everything. And because contrary to popular belief, people aren't getting teaching jobs just because it's a cush job. Right. Because the money's so good? Right. So I think that people need to temper their expectations and understand that one human being can only do so much. Right. The bigger reality of the situation is that you're going to only be able to maybe even possibly reach one or two kids the entire year. Right. That's it. Maybe. And that's the reality of it. Because
makes you want to go write some jokes, huh?
Yeah. But that's also freeing, because then I think it allows you in it to stop trying to have so much control over the situation and understand what you're working with.
Right. That's kind of the compromise of life, right?
Yeah.
You know, once you get in there and assess your situation, and it just seems like you guys, whether it's Polk County here in Florida or LA, seems like teachers there's something that's going to have to come down the pipe. I mean, I don't know. I listen, you know.
Yeah, with charter schools in and of themselves are a great thing when used appropriately.
Right.
From what I've seen. See, LAUSD wants to go to all charter. That's what they really would love to do. And you go, oh, because people get in their head that charter's automatically better. Well, Detroit is proven that idea of saying go all charter is utter garbage because you don't have any oversight.
Right.
And it becomes just a money-making scheme.
Right.
So charter schools are great when used appropriately, but LAUSD...
Oh, no, there's some sketchy charter schools.
Oh, my God.
3 portables and a fence.
Yeah.
I've seen them.
Dude, I've been there. I've seen that. And the main thing is, I go, think about this. If you went all charter... So now you have the kids, say you have kids going still to the same school, it's just been renamed, you have the same teachers.
Right.
What's the only thing that's actually changed? The teachers have less protections, they have less health benefits, they're making less money.
Right.
And now they're working a third harder than they were prior to that.
Right.
That's really the only difference.
Yeah, I know.
And then the principal or whoever's just making a crap load of money.
Right.
You know?
Boy, I tell you, these are those stories that you kind of like, you know, I look at it as it's an antiquated machine that needs updating. Like, I look at that, we have a big VA presence, Veterans Hospital presence in this area. And you start to see the incredible entitlement and the incredible amount of waste. And yes, veterans served in the country, they served for our country, but then what has become now versus, like, you know, they say a veteran from World War II was more put together in here on average than a veteran from Vietnam. At some point, it just seemed like, and I'm not saying this out of line, I'm going to bring professionals to talk about it. It's one of the things that I'm looking to be interested about is why there is, it just seems to me that the military program, the postal program, all these big government organizations, like, they all need to be upgraded. They all need to, like, shut NASA down because now we can fly a plane into space for a lot less money than launching a rocket. You know, it's like these kind of things where, like, who'd ever thought they'd ever shut NASA down? Well, I mean, you know, it's like, fuck, man, you guys are doing it wrong. We figured out newer ways to do it. Uber turned public transportation sideways. Airbnb changed the game for hotels and was that, so I just feel like there needs to be something new brought to the table, like a 2.0 makeover.
Personally, I would actually like to see us get away from big schools. Mm-hmm. I think that from what I've seen, it was myself and is it Richard that was the other teacher on the show?
Bill Kilpatrick.
Sorry. But Bill and I were talking about how he goes, my favorite school that I ever taught at was a SPAN school. And I go, dude, that's my favorite schools. It's K through 8th, and they're small, and some of these kids have been together since kindergarten.
Right.
You know, the smaller the better. Mm-hmm. And then,
well, that's that whole concept of village. You know, it's like, you know, they say that we as a people are best suited in groups of 100, 300 max. 350 million in America, not like, that's not the way it was supposed to be set up as far as how we were tribally, like from the beginning of time. We were always in tribes of 70 to 100, and now all of a sudden we're 350 million. You know, it's very difficult to try to wrap your head around that. That's why the whole concept of the president, why have one person in charge of 350 million? It was different when it was a chief for 70. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's that whole thing. Listen, we're running up against some time. So what I want to do now is, again, and I hate transit because we could be here all night. You have so much to talk about, and I greatly appreciate you coming through. We have what's called at the end of the show, the message to the universe.
All right.
And it'll be we've talked about it, so it'll be your message to your future generations and or the people that you might, there might be somebody that down the, you know, like, I had a young man here, he's like, is there something that maybe an obstacle you came across you were surprised by it. Maybe you'd like to tell him about it. And let me tell you something, he hit him with something that I was like, wow, that was really poignant for somebody so young. He was that rapper kid. So this is the time where you have a chance to tell the universe something that's on your heart, on your head, and then we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming out. I pray that you'll reach out to me before you come back around to visit Mom again, and we'll do something big and have you back on the show, and we will continue to check in with you throughout, and then we're gonna be Skypeable. So maybe you can pop in on Skype, be like, what up, Negro? You know, and then maybe your boy will pop over. What's his name? The guy that you opened for.
Doug?
Yeah, like you and Doug. Like, hey, it's Doug. What up, bro? Yeah, Doug. You know, maybe not. But I Facebook friend a British prostitute. Been doing it for 20 years in Britain, and she's very, very smart and very funny with her posts and stuff.
First, I'm so glad you just clarified that, because when you said she's been doing it for 20 years, and I thought prostituting.
Yes, in Britain.
I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's 20-year veteran in the streets.
I thought that was like her stage name.
No. So we've built a rapport just because I'm like, wow, you know, it's unique that I get to talk to somebody like this. So she's going to be my foreign correspondent, and like once or twice a year, she's going to call in and we're going to interview her. You know, I've never spoken to her, but we go back and forth all the time. So like, these are just things that I'm like, and I'm more interested, you know, it's not like I'm interested in the fact that you're a hooker. I'm interested in the stories of being a prostitute in the street, because she has her shit together, like the way she posts and stuff. Granted, I'm sure she's a nut job, but the point is, like, I'm curious about the story. I want the story from everybody. So take your time, get yourself together, and then give your message to them. Yeah, you can look right at the universe, looking right in the eye.
All right.
There's what? 5?
5. There's one right here.
Yeah, one of the 5's right there. So I guess that means 2 of the 5.
All right. Well, I guess it's going to be directed more towards comics or artists or creative types.
Excellent.
I think it goes to anybody living their life. Live life how you want to live your life, and be congruent. It's because you'll find, I think, that the majority of the time that you're unhappy or you're angry, it's because you're not doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, or that you really want to do, the things deep down in your soul. And yeah, you know what, the whole thing of doing stand-up or whatever, right? Being an actor, being a writer, whatever, here's the truth of the matter. None of it matters. None of it. The only thing that matters is if you enjoy creating and you enjoy sharing that. Because the rest of it will come and go. Your friends, people in your life will come and go. The older, if you're younger, I'm sorry to break this to you, but the world's gray. I wish it was black and white. And it's, the more you're going to see, the more your eyes are going to open to that idea. And it sucks because you're going to feel like you're giving in. That somehow and you're not fighting the good fight anymore. But no, you're accepting it so that you can do something with it.
That's right.
I've always wanted to see reality for what it really is, not for what I think it should be, or have someone try to make me to see reality through their eyes in the sense of imposing their belief system. And the reason why I want to see that is because knowledge is power. And once I can do that, I can accept it and then take responsibility to do something about it. And, you know, there's the power in that. There isn't the control. And here's the other thing that blew my mind is that literally I have no power to change anybody. Or anything. The only thing I can ever do is work on myself. You know, I can only work and improve myself over and over and over. And especially if when I think of relationships, so if someone's going to stay in your life, they will. It doesn't matter if it's a friendship, romantic, whatever. But you gotta constantly be working on yourself and never rest on any kind of laurels. I would definitely say that love and be passionate. and your sphere of influence is this much. You know, the reason why I'm not a Christian, but one of the things I loved about Jesus is that he never tried to start a church that I know of. But what he did is he influenced people's lives one-to-one. And I think about that smile that you put on somebody's face when you say, I love you. And then they take that into the world, and they're more open and free with other people that they meet. That's how the world has changed. And we try to recreate that and feel it during Christmas, you know? And, hey, everything is great. And then we go back to our own lives. Why does it have to be that way? That feeling of Christmas, that togetherness that we all share, or hopefully we all share, we could be doing that a lot more. And it has nothing to do, we live in more divisive times than we've ever lived, especially because of the news and social media, and the news has become National Enquirer. You want to feel better, just turn the news off. Go out and talk to a friend. That's the real news that's happening. The real news is whether or not you're going to go to the gym versus sitting at home and eating more cake.
That's right.
And, you know, I wish I had better answers, because there's a part of me that there's been a part of me since I was in my early 20s that wanted to burn it all down. And now I realize that there's no point to burn it all down.
That's right.
Because everything is all set in place. All we have to do is change this. I never thought that certain quotes would live with me for the rest of my life, but that Bob Marley quote, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our minds. Just constantly doing that, throwing the chains of that limiting of your own beliefs and questioning everything around you. Don't ever stop questioning. That's how the people in power win, is when we stop using our imaginations, we stop questioning. And, you know, even with that is just constantly explore ideas and concepts, even when it seems so outlandish to you. You know, it's like the big thing now is the social justice warrior PC movement. It's very easy, especially the older you get, to just discount stuff. But explore those ideas, you know? Explore, just like I explored fundamentalist Christianity, you know? And there's going to be things that I take from it, and there's everything that stuff I'm going to disregard, like Bruce Lee. Take what's useful, discard the rest. And you can do that with everything I just said. I think that's all I have for right now. So thank you.
Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Have no say for atomic energy, cause none of them can stop the time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. Mr. Dunham, thank you so much for coming through. That was some deep shit, and I believe that everybody here is going to leave with more than when they came. So I thank you so much for taking the time. Please don't be a stranger. Please come back around and see us again. It's been a blessing to have you here. Happy New Year.
Thanks, man.
Thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, love, peace, chicken grease, we out.